We are live. Welcome everyone to the second edition of the Rubberband Roundtable and Q&A. Thank you so much everyone who registered today. We're really excited to have a discussion for probably around 45 minutes with a group of leading industry experts. And today we're going to be talking about a very common theme in the Rubberband group, and that's really around technology recruitment. So
Hey,
we will.
thank you so much, everyone who
registered. Rookie error. I just had that playing in the background, so you heard my delay. Sorry. But we will be opening that up for questions for anyone that wants to post a question. Just pop it in the chat box. We will address those. We will answer as many as we can. But yes, time to go live. And I think the best place for us to start today is to introduce our industry panel. And I'm going to go around the circle with what I can see. And the first person I can see is Prash. So over to you, Prash.
Thank you. Look, thanks for having me as well. Much appreciated as well. My name is Prashan, or Prash, as everyone calls me. And I'm one of the talent acquisition specialists here at Sportsbet, focused on technology and I guess most specifically on software development at the moment. And I'll tell you what, I'm finding this more, I've done a few face-to-face things like this, but for some reason this is much more nerve-wracking. I was surprised to be nervous on a Zoom live chat, but a little bit, but I'm sure we'll be right.
Oh, I can't imagine you being nervous. And you know, the other skill to add to Prash's repertoire, he attended one of my creative workshops, and he's a secret florist by trade, I think. Natural creative talent. So
I think you did half of mine for me, mate. But again, it was good fun.
It was all you. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Prash. We can't wait to hear some more from you. Next I have, and who has sent apologies due to a lack of voice, but we'll see how you go. So over to you, Natalie.
I know I am struggling with a sore throat, so bear with me today. But I'm Natalie. Everyone calls me Nat. I work at Envato, and I lead our talent acquisition and people experience team. So very lucky to I guess, guide the journey of candidates as they come into the door, but then also really the experience they have with us once they join Envato. So onboarding all the way through their journey into offboarding. So yes, and I've been with Envato for almost 18 months. So time certainly flies.
It does fly, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Natalie. We can't wait to hear some of your insights today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No, welcome. Up next, all the way from Lakes Entrance on his holiday, we have Ed Fletcher.
Thanks very much, Eden. Yeah, my name's Ed. I'm General Manager at Circuit Recruitment. I'm relatively new at Circuit. I've been in the business for 8 months now. My background's predominantly software recruitment over the last 16 years or so. Prior to Circuit, I was a director at Hayes Recruitment for 15 years. And managed a number of startups, multinational clients, and as well as Hayes Stack Overflow relationship at the time. So that's a bit about me. Pleased to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for taking the time out of your holiday as well.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Ed. And up next, we have my friend and also colleague, Caitlin. Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Caitlin, and I do a few different things, so my intro might be a little bit long. I'll try and keep it short. So I am the talent director at Crew Talent Advisory. So we're a talent consultancy for tech companies. It's a mouthful, but it's true. So we help lots of different tech companies scale. I lead the embedded team there, so we do projects with our clients for helping them with lots of different problems and trying to help them solve and take away the pain. And then I also part-time head of people and culture at a company called Budgetly. It's a fully remote fintech here in Australia. And so helping them build their foundations from a people and recruitment point of view. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. And those watching, you may have noticed we've got a real cross-section of, I guess, consultants that are working within technology recruitment. You know, we wanted to make sure, and we're always all-inclusive, to have agency, consulting, internal, leadership, and recruiters on the panel. So thank you so much for joining us today. And any questions that you've got, if you wanted to direct them to anyone specifically, just pop their name in the message chat box, and I will, or if it's for all the panel, no need. But I do have a question that I would like to ask up front, because this is something, as I said, that is coming up regularly in the Rubberband group. And look, I know as well, because I'm working in technology recruitment, I'm finding the market to be very interesting, to say the least, at the moment. So I'd love to hear from each of you in terms of how you're finding the current candidate market, specifically in technology, obviously, and any trends that you might be noticing at the moment. So I might start with you, Prash. Tell me, how's the market for you at the moment?
It's pretty wild. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I've been in the tech space and the software development space now for, I think, over 10 years now, and I've probably never witnessed a market as unique as this one. And it's, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. Obviously, it's quite tough at the same time as well when you're trying to find top tier software developers or anyone in technology at the moment. I guess post COVID, I feel like candidates are focused on very different things. They might have been focused on these things, but they've kind of come to the forefront post COVID, in my opinion, and that stuff around, you know, flexibility, stability, their well-being, you know, what real progression and development opportunities look like. It's very easy just to say that everyone's quite money motivated at the moment because of obviously the salaries that get thrown around. They've obviously gone up, but it's very easy just to dismiss and just think that people are very money motivated now. But I think if you dig a bit deeper, people are looking for tech people are looking for a home that appeals to a lot of different things now, and that's a lot around, you know, how they feel. The flexibility means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. How a business can tailor that to them. You know, social responsibility as well, I think, is something that comes up a lot. I mean, I'm obviously work at Sportsbet, which is a leader in the wagering industry, and for us, you know, a lot of the questions come, you know, with all this success, we're a leader in our space. We're very proud that we're also a leader when it comes to safer gambling and actually implementing tools to keep people safe. You know, I think these things are much more at the forefront now, whereas it used to be, you know, how much are you going to pay me, and, you know, what am I going to be working with, and will I get on with my manager, which is all very important. But I think this other stuff's really come to the forefront, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I think there was a period of maybe, I would probably say about 12 months ago, where it was all about inflated salaries, and we were all trying to get as much budget as we could to try and get, you know, particularly developers over the line. But I feel that, you know, that more holistic EVP around flexibility and that tailored one-to-one flexibility, because I think you're right, it means something different to everyone. I think it's no longer all about work from home or work from office. You know, there's so many more facets to flexibility. So we might explore that a little bit later, but that's really interesting insight, Prash, that you're discovering that. How about yourself, Natalie? How are things for your team at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, everything, Prash, you just said, I was just nodding away because I can completely resonate with. And wild is definitely a good word to describe tech recruitment over the past sort of 12 to 18 months. You know, I sort of think back to when I started at Envato to now, how much things have changed. Now, I was talking to Tori in my team earlier, who's one of our senior tech recruiters at Envato, and, you know, we were just talking about how, you know, the candidate market is different now. I think, you know, maybe coming into a more uncertain time, tech companies, you know, there's been a lot of news around redundancies and, you know, inflation and interest rates going up. So I think really a lot of candidates are looking for that stability, and they're not as keen to jump for what might seem like a great offer as they would have been maybe 12 months ago. But just to riff off what you said a little bit more, Prash, really we're noticing, this has always been the case, but I think particularly after COVID, candidates really looking for companies where they connect with the purpose. They're looking for much more than just the job, the manager, even the career development, which is important, but they're wanting to see things like, well, what's your diversity and inclusion policy? How do you actually live that in practice? We're a B Corp, which is really attractive to a lot of potential candidates, but they want to understand, what does that mean day to day? What social impact are you having? How do I get involved in the Envato Foundation? And so there's this really strong pull and connection to purpose that we're seeing a lot more of, which is really interesting. And definitely, Prash, to your point, flexibility. We're a remote first company, and candidates really, they want to understand, what does it actually mean in practice? It's being spoken about a lot, but what does, so really unpacking that that flexibility and what it means to them. So they're some of the trends that I'm seeing at the moment.
Really, really common trends so far from the looks of things. Thanks, Natalie. That's really insightful. So we're going to talk to Ed now from more of an agency perspective, because I'm imagining, are you seeing similar trends across all of your clients? Is it different for some clients? How are you tackling this?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both what Prash and Natalie has said in terms of a shift for particularly, I think you mentioned, Eden, software engineers wanting more, developers wanting more of a purpose within their role. Again, flexibility, career development is a big thing. I think that, obviously there's a lot of talk globally and locally in the media about things potentially turning. Hopefully they don't for a while. So again, I think more techies are looking for those well-established organisations. But I think there still is a small number of people that are driven by high day rates and whatnot, who are a bit more bullish in terms of their expectations and willing to take on those risks. How much longer that will that sort of mindset will be there for, I'm not sure, because obviously we've had a few tech companies that have suffered recently. But I agree with what both Prash and Natalie said. In terms of the market, and that's definitely something we're seeing at Circuit with our clients, whether it be your startups, your medium-sized ones, or your bigger companies.
You raised something really interesting that I'd just like to probe a little bit more at, if that's okay, around consulting and day rates, because I personally felt that market was incredibly buoyant probably 6 months ago, but I'm not hearing that expectation as much. Like, is it still those really high day rates and people feeling that they're chasing that, or is that shifting for other clients too? Because I've noticed the shift in candidate expectations, where I'm not having as much pushback of people saying I'm earning much more on a daily rate. How is that going for you?
Yeah, it has shifted. You're definitely right. However, I still think there are some long-term contractors who are used to earning high day rates, who are still, as I said, willing to take those risks even if the market does turn. But yeah, it's not as prevalent as it was, 6 to 12 months ago, definitely.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Ed. And Caitlin, from a consulting perspective, or also from your other role as well, I suppose. You've got so many roles, I don't know where to start. So you're as bad as me. But
No, I think, like what everyone has said, I've been nodding along too. I find it's a weird it's a weird time right now, where we have, on one hand, all of the doom and gloom news that keeps coming out, layoffs that are being highly reported on, but then at the same time we have clients that are hiring 40, 50 roles by the end of the year and are screaming out for candidates. So one thing I have noticed, though, is a bit of a more almost hesitation from candidates. Maybe it's that risk-taking that's shifted more so for our startup clients. So candidates really wanting to know, well, how's your funding work? What's your financial stability? Maybe they aren't entertaining conversations as much as they may have used to, just because more of a fear of moving to an earlier stage startup. So those kind of clients having to work a lot harder in explaining the opportunity and the benefits, and having to be really transparent with candidates early on.
Yeah, it's interesting. And do you think that's being driven because of, I suppose, look, I won't go as far as saying bust, but some of the uncertainty coming out of the US market? Is that what's driving that nervousness, do you feel?
I think so. Like if you're working in tech, you hear all this news of these well-known companies. And it is a lot happening in the US and kind of contained there in a lot of ways, but it's still it's top of mind when you're thinking about, well, should I go to an early stage startup? How, what is it going to be like for them to raise money in the future? Is my role stable?
Okay, yeah, great. No, thanks so much, Caitlin. That was really insightful as well. So, look, what I'm getting from everyone is the candidate expectations are pretty complex. I think Prash using the word, it was a bit of a wild market at the moment. So, what I'm feeling is that there are so many more facets to candidate expectations than what we faced in the past, where it could be around a strong brand, a good RAM, and a great manager. Like there's so much more complexity to it. So I want to ask you another question, and just a reminder to anyone watching to pop any questions that you've got into the box. But one from me is in terms of hiring manager expectations, because we're dealing with all this complexity. I'm keen to understand your thoughts around, how should we be speaking to our managers? What expectations should we be setting? What kind of metrics should we be suggesting to our hiring managers? Because I feel there's a little bit of a disconnect where perhaps they're not aware of how complex these conversations are becoming. What do you think, Prash?
Look, I think metrics and data, super useful. It dictates a lot, and it tells us a lot about, candidate behavior and how we perform. But obviously I'd be wary of letting it sort of dictate or govern recruitment activity, especially when this market is as unique as it is. There's a lot of things that hiring managers have had to learn, sometimes easily, sometimes the hard way in the last sort of, 12 to 24 months. One of the interesting things around internal parity, right? So, you've got all these pretty high salary expectations or day rates, but mostly salary expectations. And even if a company's got budget to go ahead and join the arms race, I guess you could call it, the back of their mind, they do want to maintain internal parity, and that's really important. And one of the things, we try and encourage the hiring managers to look at is maybe to think about opportunities where instead of going after seniors or the finished articles, that you take a punt on a development opportunity, someone who's got less experience, someone who can grow into the role, and then maybe uplift some of your existing developers or BAs or whatever they might be, engineers of any sort. I think it's to try and answer your question. I think hiring managers need to be a bit more creative. When looking at a recruitment project or a recruitment, even if it's just one requisition or multiple, they've got to be quite creative about how they go about it, especially if you're a business that don't want to just pay and throw money at the problem. There are other ways and other levers you can pull. Metrics and data around, I think the stuff around, how many females are applying to our jobs. Those things are, really valuable to have a look, and that's something then you can work on if it's a low number or, but again, I feel like metrics at the moment, and it's just my opinion, I'd be interested to hear what the panel think about it, but it's a tough one. It's the days of time to fill and, shortlisting numbers, and that numbers game is in my opinion, quite an old fashioned attitude when it comes to recruiting in tech. I feel like there's much more than the numbers in that sort of gray space between the numbers that tells so many different stories, I reckon. But again, I'd be keen to see what the other guys think about on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what you raised in terms of, those development opportunities in technology, because I think that's been a really hard nut for us all to crack. in the past, where it has been very much they must have X number of years experience to be a senior developer, or so to hear that, you know, you're having those meaningful conversations and that you are having successes with your leaders to take that you know, those chances to develop people into those roles is actually really exciting to hear, because I think that's been a really hard conversation for us to have with, you know, our heads of or our chief technology officers in the past, because it's been very traditional and very I guess based on duration or, you know, X number of years of coding in a particular, but you know what I mean? It's in a particular language. So I think that's really great to hear, Prash, and that's really great advice for people who are, you know, joining us today to continue having those kind of conversations and to focus more on that and less of the time to hire, I suppose. What are your thoughts, Natalie?
I could not agree more, Prash, with what you're saying. I look, metrics are important, undoubtedly. They tell a story, but I think there's so much more nuance you can get from really looking at the qualitative stuff and what's actually happening. When I started, there was so much untangling that needed to be done with, I guess, the traditional process, the way recruitment had always been done, and the way we needed to change from a hiring manager's mindset perspective around what we needed to do to catch up with the new world. And I feel really fortunate. I've got a fantastic team in the TA space. Tori, I mentioned, and I've also got Imi, the two senior TAs in Australia. And I think for me, it was really important, and it's a small thing, but we call them senior talent acquisition partners, not recruiters, because they really partner with the business. And it's around having those conversations that you were alluding to, Prash, around really setting the hiring manager expectation and what we need, the role they play in the process. And I always say, anyone at Envato will tell you, I'm a bit like a broken record. I always say talent is an all of business responsibility. It's not a TA responsibility. So if you want this to work, if you want to hire the best people, we need everyone on board, from, you know, I'll refer to tech, but from our CTO to our engineering directors to our senior engineering managers. Every single person plays a really important role in the process. And so for us, it was really around two things. Firstly, candidate experience. So getting them away from that mentality of, you need to prove to us that you're an amazing software engineer because we've got really high standards. Yes, that's still true to a certain extent, because we want to keep our high standards. But also, we need to prove to you why, if you're an amazing software engineer, you should choose us when you've got probably 10 offers on the table. So flipping that mindset and really getting our hiring managers to focus on candidate experience and selling, reducing the time that we're taking, you know, condensing the steps as much as possible to make it a much better experience for the candidates. But secondly, challenging the thinking, exactly what you were saying, Prash, around, okay, you want a senior, let's look at the makeup of your team, or you're saying you need more diversity in your team. Let's unpack that. What does that actually mean? Like, do you need more women? Is it other diversity that you need? And how can we really look at the makeup of the team and partner with you to get the best outcome? So for me, it's much more around partnership than it is around metrics. Metrics are almost the output at the end of the day, but really getting in deep and really getting to know the business and helping navigate that hiring manager experience, I think, is what's helped our team be successful in a pretty tough market.
What I love that you just raised there, Natalie, is in terms of the responsibility of, you know, everyone within the business, but particularly those that are making hiring decisions, is that it's no longer just about selection. You know, a hiring manager is also responsible for attraction. You know, it's not our job as recruiters or talent acquisition specialists to provide them with a shortlist and, you know, that's our responsibility then over to them to pick who they want. They need to be driving that attraction and providing that experience and, you know, celebrating, lifting, showcasing the employee value proposition to the market. I think it's so paramount now. And I love that. I think that's really great advice for people online today as well.
And for the most part, just to add to that, and they want to do it, they just didn't know how to do it. So it was helping them learn how to be better talent advocates. So part of our job is upskilling our hiring managers as well.
Yeah. And again, the complexity around that, right? Because it's, you know, for a lot of people, and I particularly find that in, you know, in technology and other verticals as well, like finance, for example, they haven't had to do that before. So it is a big mindset shift for them too. And, I suppose our responsibility as well to make our jobs even more complex is that education piece, right? But it's really great to hear that that's something that you're having successes with. Ed, really great question for you, because we've got a lot of agency people online as well. Like, what are the clients' expectations like? How are you finding it? We've heard from a couple of internals.
Yeah, just to go back to, we're talking about, time frames or time to hire, that sort of thing. And yeah, as an agency recruiter, that was a world when we had a lot more certainty, and agree with, what Natalie and Prash has said. The market we're in, that doesn't exist anymore. So we need to have much more of that consulting piece. What we're seeing more of, and I love Natalie expanded on what Prash was talking about, is looking at not just, more diverse teams in terms of females in tech, but looking at, neurodiverse candidates that or staff that can work part-time that perhaps wouldn't have been considered in the past to fill those gaps. And even and other avenues. But yeah, from an agency perspective, I've definitely agreed that, 10 years ago, I would have loved to have said that, and worked with a client that said, we can, get your CVs by this date, you'll interview them and they'll get hired. But yeah, the world doesn't work that way anymore. There's so much more complexity to teams, culture, tech, and that's what we need to work with. A lot of uncertainty.
And is it hard to break down that perception that, it is, they're reaching out to an agency, so therefore you'll have candidates good to go, like back in the day? I remember, you would reach out to your specialist and you would kind of had an expectation that, the profiles will start coming relatively quickly. Has that been hard to shift that mentality with your clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's where the longer term established relationships with clients, where you share similar values as an agency recruiter and them as a business, and they know yourself or your team, and there's trust there. But obviously in a buoyant market where there's more players now, perhaps that's not happening, But I still think there are those that have embedded within businesses, and you probably know them yourself, Eden, that really trust you as an individual and will reach out for specific roles because they know that you'll be absolutely frank with them in terms of perhaps when you can get them, if you can't get them, and just having that whole collaborative piece, which I think Natalie was talking about with her team.
Awesome. No, agreed. I just wanted to, just before I hand over to Caitlin, I just want to do a call out. We just had a message there that there was a bit of an issue with the playback. Is it working okay for everyone now? If you could just pop in the chat box if it's working okay while Caitlin's talking, we will try and get that resolved. Oh no, it looks okay. We're getting comments. Okay, cool, awesome. Over to you, Caitlin.
Yeah, I think for myself, working with Crew and hiring for Budgetly, I've been focusing a lot of time on that recruitment prep. So really bringing together the hiring team. I like to say that hiring is a team sport, like really getting everyone on the same page. We going into the process knowing what we're looking for and why, and how we're selling the role and why someone would want to join the team. All of those things are really clear and set out at the beginning, and then we can have a really then having feedback on what the candidates are saying based off of that. You can keep that really tight, and it's more impactful to come back and say, well, this is what we're looking for, this is what candidates are saying, here's the disconnect, and then it's easier to make that choice of let's shift what we're looking for or our approach. And I think hiring managers do need to be more open to being creative, and I think also really transparent about their roles that they're working on, and really what it's like to work in their team, and that mind shift of it isn't selection, you're trying to attract someone into your team as well. What we've been saying, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I know that it's something that that you've done really well. like, what does that look like? I mean, Natalie talked about it really well as well in terms of hiring managers or clients becoming, I guess, talent advocates. Like, what sort of things can they do to kind of get that message out there, or to assist with their internal teams or consulting or agencies to sell the role, I suppose?
Yeah, I think like taking the time to really work with your recruiter on the messaging, like what's going to actually attract that type of person. Even as simple as like going and sitting down and doing like a sourcing session with your recruiter, helping them really make sure that they're communicating the right way to the right candidate. I think that's insight that they can hiring managers can easily give. A step above that, though, is, you know, if they're open to doing an interview video about the role, or writing their own posts and posting that about the role, like whatever they can do with really transparent content, I think is really like the next step that hiring managers can be involved with, because people want to see, you know, they're more attracted to the overall offerings of a business, what they're going to work on, the impact. And the best way to learn about that, I think, in my opinion, is straight from the person you're going to be working with and whose team it is. So I think more of that transparent conversations and content can make a huge difference. And that's like where that talent advocacy is really next level.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel it brings a level of authenticity as well if it's actually coming from the team member rather than, you know, the HR team or the talent team, because they're seeing it from us, but then they're also seeing it from the business, and they're you know, it's real, right? It is actually what's out there. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so I've had a few questions come through. So the first one I'm going to ask everyone, but is there a particular area that you're experiencing lower candidate expectations around day rates? So I might start with you, Ed. Like, are there particular areas where those day rate contractors we're seeing less of, or we're seeing lower expectations than we were in the past?
Yeah, I think there are, and I think with recent commentary in the news and whatnot, again, they're the ones that are probably less risk adverse because their skill sets aren't perceived, or they don't perceive them as being in demand. They're probably in the more traditional areas of tech. So I'd probably say, you know, your more traditional infrastructure roles, your older technologies within software as well as testing. But I wouldn't say we've seen just yet significant day rate changes in other areas. I don't know what everyone else here whether they'd agree with me or not.
I can't think of any area.
Prash, I'll hand over to you, Prash. What do you think?
I literally can't think of many areas within technology right now where, and I'll speak mostly from a salary base. I don't really have as much to do with contracting, but I can't think of many areas in the tech space that have gone south. You know, like you said, I mean, there's some real specialist engineering languages out there that have gone the other way, and they've gone really, you know, they've gone north. But I can't think of any area that, you know, are probably selling themselves short, I guess, at this stage.
You may, oh, sorry to...
no, you go ahead, yeah.
You may even get someone who says, I want to work completely remotely from Perth for a client in Melbourne, and I'll drop, you know, $100 a day, $200 a day, but I, you know, only want to come down to the office once a quarter or something like that. But apart from that, we're not seeing, you know, significant dropping in rates just yet.
But are we seeing less? I guess, are we seeing businesses hire less of these daily rate contractors? Because my question around that, like, you know, you talked about testers and, you know, and QA, I suppose, where it tended to be a contractual, you know, a contract or contingent workforce in the past, but people have seen so much value in what they bring, and they've really been part of, you know, they've established, you know, in terms of automation teams or whatever it might be, these really strong permanent teams within their business. Could that be what's driving the lack of talent in those kind of spaces? Like, does anyone have an opinion on that? Oh, I probably just made absolutely no sense, but I'm meaning
No, Aidan, you made perfect sense. We very rarely hire contractors for that reason. It takes so much time, effort, and energy to train and get somebody up to, you know, the standard where the output's very high. For us, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, there's exceptions, of course, there always is, but for the most part, we would always hire on a permanent basis.
Yeah, and do you face that, or Tori, or your team, or yourself? Like, do you face when talking to candidates that they still have an expectation for a daily rate, or are you finding that conversation becoming easier?
Much easier. And I think particularly if we go back to right at the start of the conversation and some of the things we were talking about that candidates are looking for now in terms of lifestyle and you know, the type of company they want to work for and the benefits, and you know, it becomes a much easier conversation all around.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so next question, unless anyone else got any comments around that in terms of daily rate, we're all good. Cool. Well, the next one, you know, a little bit similar. So with this market no longer being so bullish, are salaries starting to take a hit? And if so, in what areas, roles, verticals are we seeing this? So areas perhaps where those candidate expectations of the inflated permanent salaries are starting to ease, I suppose. Are there any particular areas that you're noticing? I might start with you, Caitlin.
I'm trying to think, like, I haven't necessarily seen it ease as of late, but I think people are looking at the overall comp and bends more. So if you have a really attractive benefits package, that can make up for a slightly lower salary. Not always. Some people are still going to be quite strict on their salary expectations, but I think people are looking more beyond just a salary at this stage.
So less about the base plus super and more about everything that we've talked about, lifestyle, flexibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing I've found with Budgetly being fully remote and always will be remote, that actually has been really helpful. I don't know about others with like having flexible working, but not being able to define it, that actually can get you quite stuck. Like having a clear, defined, this is what's going to happen in the future, so you can continue to work from where you are or wherever you want to be. I think that's an important thing that needs to be defined as part of an overall package, just as a side note, really. But I found that's been helpful when it has been super clear.
Yeah, fantastic. Any thoughts from you, Prash, in terms of you seeing any expectations of any particular verticals where you're seeing the candidate expectations ease at all? Or are you, like you said earlier, it feels like it's across the board, really, that, yeah.
I think I'm having less conversations where you ask someone what their salary expectations and it's less breathtaking. Let's put it that way. It's less than maybe what it was, 6 months to 12 months ago. I still feel like the bar across the board has raised, and I think that's bar in terms of people's salaries and expectations in terms of REM has been raised and probably raised permanently. It's stuck at a certain level now, and it's not going to go any lower. I find it, again, to go back to the beginning of the conversation, the stuff that appeals to people again is a lot more now than just your dollars and cents. Interestingly, Caitlin, talking about remote, we're in a situation where we're kind of battling with, can we offer full remote roles? Technology-wise, we definitely can, but we're also trying to maintain, the essence of what Sportsbet is, and that is very much face-to-face communication and office culture. And where obviously you can definitely collaborate and harness a great culture remotely. I think we still are kind of hoping for, even if it's, once or twice a week, come in and do things as a team. If it's eat, if it's, basically just hang out, really. And that's something that, I definitely agree. I feel like sometimes holds us back, but also sometimes points us to the right type of people that we're after, that want to come in and sit and, watch the footy with your mates. And it is that sort of environment. So it's kind of, it's interesting because you can try and pull as many levers as you can to be more attractive, but you also want to stay true to your brand and stay true to what your business is about and what your company is about. So it's an interesting tussle at the minute, I must admit.
But I love it, Prash, because I've visited your workplace a few times, and it is full of energy. It is full of people, and there's a lot of activity going on. People playing, table tennis and all sorts of things going on, and the football's on the screen and all of that. And I think if that's true to your brand, and if that's what you will attract those people, because I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think as long as people do have a choice in terms of how they choose to work, if that tends to be in an environment where there's a lot of social interaction face to face, and that's a really great thing to celebrate for those people, and you'll attract those right people. And then there are other organizations where there's more work from home. Like I don't think there's a right or wrong here, and I think being able to showcase and celebrate the uniqueness of your company and what it's like to work there is fine. I know, Natalie, you talked that Envato's quite a remote first culture, but in a really positive way as well. So what are your thoughts around that?
Really interesting. There's no, like you said, there's no right or wrong way, but I think I think it was your point, Caitlin. It's around being really super clear about what the expectations are. I think one of the benefits we've noticed being remote first is that we're able to attract talent, anywhere in Australia or New Zealand for roles. So in terms of that talent pool, it really does open up some amazing people that we might not have been able to attract or, get into our organisation if we were very Melbourne centric, which we used to be. So I think that's definitely helped from an attraction point of view. On the salary point, definitely salary expectations vary from city to city and state to state and based on where people are and that sort of level of flexibility they want. I can't remember who said it earlier, but there's definitely more of that. I'm willing to compromise a little bit on my overall package if I got the flexibility to choose when I come into the office or to work 100% from home. So there's challenges with that, of course, there always is. And you've really, I think with a remote first culture, you've got to, I look after people experience as well. I've got a great team there, but you've got to be so much more deliberate than coming to the office and let's just all hang out. You've really got to plan and be very inclusive. So no right or wrong way. But yeah, we're definitely remote first and it works for us.
Totally. And I think you're absolutely right. It is choice. It is, and for, people to be able to work in the best way that suits them. And if that's remote, then that's great. But if they wanted to go into the Envato office, then that's fine as well. If there's...
We also have a very cool office.
Yeah.
A brand new one. So it is quite fun.
Yeah, I've been to the Envato office. It's beautiful in there, I must admit. I was going to say,
absolutely.
Do you guys just offer... Is it offered, if you don't mind me asking that, is it offered you can come in on these particular days, or is it
completely up to you? Completely up to you. So yeah, so with me and my team, we try and get together once a week. Sometimes it happens, sometimes, sick kids or whatever get in the way of that. But yeah, we don't mandate. It's completely up to the individual how they choose to work. But yeah, the office, you might not have been to our new office, Prash. We've moved to Swanston Street.
Oh, no, I've been to your old one. So that was probably about, okay. Oh, so it must be
You'll
nice.
have to come visit.
I will do.
Definitely. I mean, it's even cooler than the other one. There we go. That was a cool office as it was there on the corner of King Street. There you go.
It's like we've grown up a little bit. We're teenagers now. So.
Remember when that office opened, it was the talk of the town, Natalie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool. But, just old building.
And look, it's a really interesting thing that we're talking about now, because we're all talking about the excitement of a really cool office, even though all 5 of us are currently at home. So it does have meaning for people, right? Like I think having that option to be able to go somewhere that is collaborative, that is fun, that is energetic, and to your point, Natalie, that's what's going to drive people to make that choice to go in when the time is right for them to be able to go in. Ed, I'll just quickly ask you, because we are running out of time, but how are you finding, your clients' approach to this and the expectations of candidates? Are most of your clients pro-choice when it comes to how to work? Or are you...
It's so varying. There are the odd ones which are, more in the dark ages that aren't, haven't gotten with the times. It's still, insist on people being in the office, which obviously limits their options. But I think most these days, because they're already finding it tough to fill roles, are driven by what the individual wants. So yeah, it completely depends on the industry, the organisation type, and the skill set. Yeah.
Magic. All right. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, so I just wanted to go around just a very quick from each of our expert panelists. A quick sort of one-liner of what advice you would give to anyone that is watching, that is keen to know what they should do to move forward in this what did you call it, wild market, Prash? So what would your advice be?
I'll be as quick as I can. I know we're running out of time. I guess, we talk a lot around it being a great market for candidates, tech candidates. It's also a great time for really good tech recruiters. This is a time that, your skills are really at the forefront and you're really, really helping businesses. I think it's a great time to specialize in this particular space. And I think the ones that have the best joy are the ones that are really genuine and authentic. And what I mean that is, that aren't too pushy, that aren't too salesy. They won't call up and say, I've got the best role for you, which I find weird because how can you possibly know that? Really, really the networkers, the people who are interested in building long-term relationships with their candidates, you will do very well in this market, and you will help if it's the agency you work for or the company, your internal role, whatever it is. You will help them achieve some pretty great things when it comes to recruitment if you're about that, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably my strap line.
Oh, no, absolutely agree. There is so much purpose connected to anyone specializing in recruitment, full stop, at the moment. It really, really is. I completely agree, Prash. Thank you so much. Natalie, what would your sort of last sound bite of advice be?
Parting thoughts.
Yes.
Focus on what you can control. I think it's really easy to get distracted with what every other tech company is doing out there, and it's like, I feel like every second day someone's sending me something going, look what this company is doing, and that's great. It's good to kind of have a pulse on what's happening, but focus on the things that you can control, and really lean into what your EVP is, and try not to get distracted with those other things. And I think celebrate the wins. So with my team, we love to do retros once a quarter and look back, because it's so easy to look at how much you've got to do, and it's easy to forget to look back and go, look how much we've achieved. So it's just celebrate the wins along the way and enjoy it, because recruitment is a ride. So I think you've got to enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Natalie. Caitlin, final thoughts.
I think trying to do things a little bit differently is something people should be thinking about in this market. Doing things this way you always have and expecting different results is not going to work. So I think as the recruiters, working with hiring teams, really trying to push for a bit more creativity, being open to trying new things, transparency, and getting hiring managers to open up and be a bit more risk takers with how they're promoting their roles and talking to candidates, I think.
Amazing. Couldn't agree more. And last but not least, all the way from Lakes Entrance, final thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, thanks, Eden. For me, it's embracing the more of the softer touch, the human side. We're social beings, and I think where appropriate and where people are open to it, meeting with people more again, whether it's over Zoom, for coffee, for lunch, and just embracing that more of that human element that I think sometimes is lost throughout COVID or has been lost throughout COVID. And again, it's where people are comfortable in doing that. And on top of that, attending meetups and sharing valuable content for your clients and your candidates. I think that's my final takeaway, Eden. I know the last bit's something you're really good at.
Well, look, I think sharing is very important. Sharing knowledge, reaching out for help. Anyone out there, and look, thank you so much to the panel for doing exactly that today. This is as I mentioned earlier, a theme that's coming up within the Rubberband group, and I'm sure other groups are seeing the same thing, where it's a challenging market for people. People are struggling. It is hard. It is wild, to quote Prash. Wild seems to be the word of the day. But don't be afraid to reach out for help. Don't be afraid to be creative, as Caitlin suggested, and, really do support each other. It's, the market isn't going to change quickly. Hopefully it will become easier as we learn from each other, as we grow. So anyone out there that hasn't joined the Rubberband group, please do. Facebook group Rubberband. We have these conversations constantly. We're always there to help each other. But again, thank you to our amazing panel, to Prash, Natalie, Caitlin, and Ed. I hope everyone got some great insights out of that. And thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Have an amazing evening,
Thank
everyone.
you.
And see you for the next one. Good night. Bye.